A short story by Trevor Dennis called Sunflower. All about was desolation, the stale, stinking canal, the old railroad buildings, the streets with the trash of last month still piled in the gutters, the lampposts broken. Some of the apartments were boarded up, others had their windows broken. All, or nearly all, looked sad, tired, and as if they should have been pulled down years ago. At first glance, or even second or third glance, there was nothing of beauty to be seen anywhere. There was no grass, and no trees grew there. Some of the children had never seen trees. Yet, if you looked hard, you might catch sight of a geranium in a high-perched window box, while on the end of one terrace, someone had painted a large mural of mountains and fields and birds flying in a blue sky, but the graffiti scrawled across it did not fit in with the design. At the end of Main Street, the desolation was complete. For 30 years, the empty site had been there ever since a gas explosion had killed Chuck and Molly asleep in their bed in the front room downstairs. No one had ever found their bodies. For 30 years, the empty site had been their only memorial, empty, broken, bearing no inscription. No one had ever put any flowers there. It was covered instead with broken pieces of masonry and the inevitable litter. It defeated even the most vigorous and persistent weeds. Nothing grew there until one autumn, a seed took root. The following spring, nobody noticed the plant for several weeks, but in the end, you could not miss a sunflower. There it stood, 5 or 6 feet tall, with its heavy golden head. When the sun was out, its yellow was so intense that people would shield their eyes against it, but on dull days, and most days were overcast on Main Street, it shone almost as powerfully as if a strange light of its own burned within its petals. It caused quite a stir. Most of the local people had never seen a sunflower, and if they had not seen one quite like that. Nothing had grown on their bomb site before. They would gather around in small groups looking at it, wondering what to do with it. There were a few who were cheered by its beauty. Of those, some were even changed by it. That sunflower lifted them out of the drabness of their world, and their own drabness fell off of them. You could tell them by the way they walked. They no longer had that tired, dejected stoop so characteristic of the inhabitants of those streets. Most people, however, were merely bewildered. They did not know what to make of the flower. It was so out of place. It did not fit, and you could not write graffiti all over it to make it fit. So they just left it alone and thought they would get used to it. But they didn't. It was so conspicuous with that strange light it had and its piercing yellow. It showed up the drabness, the desolation all around for what it was, empty, ugly, dead. That was why, after a time, most of the people grew to be so bitter about it. It had led a few out of the wilderness, but the rest it had left there, recognizing for the first time what sort of place they lived in. They could not see the path leading out of their desert, and so they remained there, trapped, and for the first time, feeling trapped. It became intolerable. You can't blame them. You or I would have done the same, feeling as they did. One evening, they were in a great crowd to the bomb site, and they trampled on that sunflower, and they danced on it, and beat the fibers of its leaves and stem into the ground, and crushed its petals till they were but a stain which the dust soon covered. Then they went away in silence, their job done. Yet, they destroyed that strange plant in high summer when its flower was full of ripe seed. In their dance of death, they scattered that seed over the entire bomb site and buried some of it in the ground. So it was that next spring, the bomb site at the end of Main Street was covered with sunflowers. There were flowers on Chuck and Molly's grave at last.